Hi and welcome to another story. If you're enjoying Dob Entertainment and want even more, then check out my Patreon channel, patreon.com/James Dobinson. Link in the description. There you'll find full audiobooks for Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, Lord of the Rings, Roald Dahl, David Walliams and many more being added all the time. Thanks for your support as always. Let's get into the story. Hi and welcome to another story, and today we have part 4 of Animalcolm by David Baddiel, continuing from chapter 26, Bring Me a Manky Apple. Next thing Malcolm knew, Trotsky had jumped over the wall of the sty and landed in the mud, looking very pleased with himself. "Malcolm," he said, speaking cat, but very much in his excited dog voice. "Malcolm, Malcolm, Malcolm, Malcolm! Do yous remember me? Do yous remember me?" "Yes," said Malcolm. "What about us?" "Yes, us. Us three." Malcolm looked up, knowing what he was going to see, the heads of the 3 dollies poking over the sty wall. "What do you mean, cat?" said Ludwig, "when you say this pig is a boy?" "Well," said Zaza. "Hold on," said Malcolm. "How come you can speak to each other? Do you speak pig as well?" "No," said Mabel. "Ludwig speaks cat. He speaks all the malanguages." "The what?" "The malanguages, short for animal languages." "Yes," said Ludwig grandly, "I do." He then said, "I do" in cat, tortoise, sheep and dog. All of them sounded to Malcolm just like the words, "I do," said over and over again. Except when he said it in dog, which Malcolm didn't understand because he hadn't been one, it sounded a bit like he was saying sausages, but Malcolm thought it was best not to say that, as he thought it wasn't a word Ludwig would like much. "Anyway," said Zaza, "the point is, and us. Yes, we're here too. Yes, or at least on our way." Malcolm looked around. It was Benny and Bionita's voices, but he couldn't see them. He could hardly hear them. "Don't worry," said Zaza. "They're halfway across the field. They'll get here eventually. So, point is..." "Well, you explain, Malcolm." So Malcolm explained the whole thing to Ludwig and Mabel, the situation with K-Pax, his transformation into all the animals he'd been so far, the fact that he'd been given 3 days, with 2 remaining, to find a way of getting back to being human, and the possibly unnecessary information that during his time as a sheep, he had been convinced he was about to be made into chops, when in fact he was only getting sheared. Said Ludwig. "I have never seen K-Pax, but I have too heard stories about the goat." "That he turns people into animals," said Malcolm. "No," said Ludwig. "Stranger than that." He leant in closer to Malcolm, whispering, "That like a human. Like, indeed, Gavin the human." "Yes," whispered Malcolm. "He has a beard." Malcolm nodded. "Yes, well, he does, but..." "Oh my goodness, it is true!" "No, but... and a moustache?" "Not really." "Oh. Look, never mind the facial hair. Can you talk to K-Pax? See if you can persuade him to undo the spell. He won't speak to me." Ludwig looked for a second, slightly embarrassed. "No, I'm afraid goat is the one language I've never mastered. It's very tricky. Lot of back-of-the-throat whoring." "Right, so what should we do?" said Malcolm. "It's an unusual situation, certainly. It requires all of my great wisdom." "Thank heaven, then, you are a pig of great wisdom," said Mabel. Ludwig turned and began walking up a series of piled-up logs onto the top of the pig's sleeping area, a small hutch in the middle of the sty. The rest of the animals waited and watched, with bated breath. Ludwig reached the flat surface of the hutch. He stopped. He sat down. He surveyed them all, puffed out his chest and said, "Bring me a manky apple." "Will you," said Mabel, "use the manky apple to cure the boy of his pigginess?" "No," said Ludwig. "Will you," said Bionita, "use the manky apple to convince K-Pax to change the spell?" "No," said Ludwig. "Will you," said Dolly 1. "Yes, will you," said Dolly 2. "I say, will you," said Dolly 3. "Look," said Ludwig, "I'm hungry. I can't think straight on an empty stomach. Bring me the stupid apple and make it manky." Trotsky jumped up, rooted around in the trough, brought out an apple in his mouth, bounded up to the roof of the hutch and dropped the apple in front of Ludwig, who proceeded to eat it, slowly and with a big "I'm thinking" look on his face. "Excuse me," said Malcolm, while this was going on. "I don't know what the best thing to do is, but I think I can just go home. If I can just get to my mum and dad, they'll know what to do." Over to the west, the sun was beginning to set behind a small wood. His second day was running out. At this point, Malcolm felt like he might cry, but he didn't want to cry in front of all the animals. Luckily he didn't, because pigs don't have tear ducts, so he just said, his piglet voice breaking a little, "Yes, I'm sure they will." All the other animals looked on with concern, apart from Ludwig, who, while Malcolm had been talking, had just been snuffling loudly around the manky apple. It was now finished, although a bit of a manky core was still stuck in his snout. "Right," said Ludwig, looking up. "To the horses!" Chapter 27. Oh, so clever pig. We're still coming, said Benny. We're on our way, don't worry, said Bjornita. Yes, nearly there. Hang on. Where are you lot going? Sausages, 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 said Trotsky, but they were already well past the tortoises. Oh, for crying out loud, said Bjornita, beginning to turn around. They're heading for the horses. It took a little while for all the animals to get to the horse field. Trotsky was there first, followed by Zaza. Then the dollies arrived, but they didn't stop and carried on running past, quite a long way. Trotsky ran after them, shouting, Come back! Come back! But, possibly because the sheep didn't speak dog, they just carried on running away. Eventually, he had to run past them and herd them back to where they were meant to be. Luckily, this meant that Ludwig and Mabel, and indeed Malcolm, had enough time to catch up, arriving just as the sheep came back. Malcolm himself had found it difficult to keep up, as he was only a piglet, with tiny little piglet legs, carrying quite a fat little piglet body. Ludwig stopped and surveyed the scene. Malcolm tried to see as best he could, above the fence posts. He thought he could make out, through the wire and grass, 5 horses in there, 2 brown, 2 black and 1 white. Right, Fatty Bum Bum, said Ludwig. What we need to do is... Please don't call me Fatty Bum Bum. No, but I have explained to you that I'm trying to make you embrace your pigginess. And I've explained to you I'm a boy called Malcolm. That's why we're here, by the horses, isn't it? You've got a plan to get me back to my human parents. There was quite a long pause after this, while Ludwig coughed and snuffled and looked around. Eventually Mabel said, I think he's right, Ludwig. All right, Mabel, no need to rub it in. Ha 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 ha, said Zaza. The oh-so-clever pig, the cleverest of all the animals, got confused. Shut up, cat. Right, okay, let's start again. Ahem. So, Ludwig took a deep breath, and then he let out again. Look, can I call you Fatty Bum Bum anyway? It's such a nice name. Malcolm. Ludwig sighed with a sense of, you don't know what you're missing. So, Malcolm, he said, here's my plan. You go to sleep, you wake up as a horse, and then you run home to your parents. Trotsky and the dollies made admiring noises about this plan. Mabel sighed with love and awe. Even Zaza looked impressed, and she, like all cats, never looked impressed. Yes, it's a good idea, said Malcolm, choosing not to mention that he'd thought of it ages ago. OK, I'll give it a try. And with that he rolled onto his side, put a hoof under his head, and shut his eyes. Chapter 28. Wah! However, after 5 minutes, Malcolm could feel he was very much still awake. He opened his eyes. What's wrong? Said Ludwig. I can't sleep, said Malcolm. You can't sleep, said Mabel. No, he said. I'm normally good at sleeping, and when I was a cat I was extra good at it. Zaza looked smug about this. But I think I've been doing too much sleeping since I became an animal. I don't feel tired at all. Said Ludwig. We'll just have to sing you a lullaby. Really? Yes, it's the one we've sung to all our children. Close your eyes again, please. Malcolm did as he was told, and then he heard the Ludwig singing in a low voice to a lullaby-like tune these words. Go to sleep, little piggy, dream of mud, little piggy, and apples so manky. Then Mabel joined in, about an octave higher. Go to sleep, little piggy, curl up like your tail, little piggy, be as still as a piggy banky. Then all the animals joined in. The sheep were actually harmonising. Sleep, 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 little piggy. Don't worry about snoring, little piggy, because the noise you make all the time is a bit like snoring anyway. Then just Ludwig again, with a big operatic flourish. It's snorting, which is like snoring, like snoring. No, sorry, said Malcolm, opening his eyes and cutting off Ludwig's final long note. I don't think that's going to work. Oh, said Ludwig. It always does normally. Malcolm looked out onto the field. Behind the horses he could see that the sun was almost completely down now. Only a few red rays shone through the trees. I think we haven't got time to wait until I'm sleepy. If the 3 days thing is right, I've only got 2 nights left. Ludwig took this in. Mabel and Trotsky and Zaza and the dollies all looked stumped, and then Ludwig turned to the field and shouted, Snowflake! Snowflake! Seconds later the ground was shaking, and seconds after that the white horse that Malcolm had only distantly glimpsed had come over to the fence. From his position near to the ground, the horse looked like a giant fairy tale horse, one that might at any moment grow a horn or wings. Nay, said Snowflake. Malcolm remembered that he hadn't been a horse, so he couldn't speak their language. Nay, 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 said Ludwig. Whinny, whinny, long, hard blow out through the nostrils, shaking my head at the same time. Whinny, whinny, nay. Nay, whinny, said Snowflake. Blue and yellow, said Ludwig in his own language. Yeah, said Snowflake. You just asked me what colour hat my mum wears on a Tuesday. Have I? Said Ludwig. I may need to brush up on my horse. It's okay. Luckily I speak pig. Ludwig looked a little put out at this, but carried on in his own language all the same. Fine. How would you like to be ridden by a pig? Said Ludwig. What, you? You'd break my back. That's kind of you to say, said Ludwig, who seemed only too pleased when anyone made reference to his weight. But no. Malcolm felt Ludwig's snout on his back, a type of pointing. This little fellow. Name of Malcolm. Malcolm. Sounds like a middle-aged bank manager with 3 kids who play squash at the weekends. I know. I've offered him Fatty Bum Bum, but... Ludwig, said Malcolm, please, we don't have long. Ludwig sighed but nodded. He needs to get to the city, quickly, he said. Snowflake looked down. His long nose and his big brown eyes came very close to Malcolm's face. Why's that, little chap? That's where my mum and dad are, said Malcolm. A city farm? No, they're not pigs, they're humans. Snowflake shook his head. His mane waved in the air. Is this something to do with K-Pax? He said. Yes, said Malcolm. OK, said Snowflake. Hold on. Malcolm nodded, although he wasn't sure what to hold on to, and also because he didn't have any fingers. How? All this came into mind with a rush as Snowflake's long muzzle burrowed underneath him and lifted him high into the air. OK, said Snowflake. Now stop holding on. I'm not holding on, and I don't know how or what to hold on to anyway. He said this as Snowflake threw his snowflakes, that is, head high in the air, causing his, Malcolm's that is, body to slide down his long neck, eventually ending up, with a backwards head over heels, tumble-sitting, with his tiny legs astride the huge horse's body, in the saddle. Right, said Snowflake. Now hold on. No, but hold on to what, and with what? Screamed Malcolm. A snowflake reared up in the air, bolted to the edge of the field, jumped over the fence and started off at a canter on the path out of the farm. Chapter 29. Well. As dusk fell on Orwell Farm, Mr. Barrington was in the living room looking out of the window. Animals, he thought, what an easy life they have. Eat and sleep and eat. OK, sometimes it was eat and sleep and get eaten, but the ones that they kept for milk or wool or to show to children, like most of the ones on Orwell Farm, Mr. Barrington couldn't help envying them a little. Being a human, certainly being a grown-up, a very grown-up, Mr. Barrington wasn't seeing 59 again, in charge of a large group of Year 6 children, was such hard work sometimes. It had been a long day. The children had been pretty rowdy since the sheep shearing, particularly the boys who'd chased the sheep back to their field. They had hardly calmed down since. Still, they were brushing their teeth now and getting into their pyjamas. Mr. Barrington was looking forward to them all being in bed, and then maybe he could settle down on the sofa with a Sudoku puzzle and a tiny drop of whiskey from the flask he had brought with him. Suddenly, his mobile phone went. Hello? Hello, Mr. Barrington, it's Malcolm Bailey's father, Stuart. Oh, yes, hello. Is Malcolm there? Malcolm? Yes, I'm sure he is. They're upstairs. I'll just go and... Mr. Barrington! Mr. Barrington! He looked up from the phone. 2 of the pupils were running into the living room, waving their hands frantically. Mr. Barrington squinted at them. They were wearing identical pyjamas. They looked like the same person, but they couldn't be right. He would have to go to his optician again. Sorry, I'm on the phone. Ellie. It's Ellie. And I'm her twin brother, Fred. Oh, yes, anyway. But look, Mr. Barrington, out there. Mr. Barrington looked out of the window again. All he could see was what he'd seen before, the field outside the farmhouse, the gathering dusk, the trees in the distance, and... What's that? Yes, that white blur, what is it? It's a horse, Mr. Barrington, a white horse being ridden by a tiny piglet. Mr. Barrington frowned and leant closer to the window. Are you sure? Yes. So what's that behind it? It's a whole group of animals chasing the horse, said Fred. Which animals? Said Mr. Barrington. A dog, a cat, 3 sheep. Oh, look, 2 other bigger pigs. And what's that in the distance? Is it 2 tortoises? Impossible to tell from here. Can you see, Mr. Barrington? No, I can't see. Not in this light, you know. Anyway, have either of you seen Malcolm? Ellie shook her head. Actually, no. Haven't seen him for a little while. Last time I saw him was yesterday, just before tea, out near the goat pen, said Fred. Mr. Barrington picked up the phone again. Sorry, Mr. Bailey. Hello? All he could hear at the other end was brrr, ha ha ha, brrr, ha ha ha. Mr. Bailey, said Mr. Barrington, do you want to speak to Malcolm? No, it's okay, brrr, ha ha ha, said Stuart. You're all clearly having a fabulous time. I don't want to interrupt all your crazy storytelling, making up all sorts of goings-on at that farm. A piglet riding a horse. In the background, Mr. Barrington heard someone say, LOLT 2000. Brrr. Brilliant. Well, said Mr. Barrington, who frankly remained unsure whether Fred and Ellie had been making it up or not, and therefore could not think of what to say except, well, and then, thank you. Mr. Barrington hung up the phone. I'm getting too old for this, he thought. Part 3. Chapter 30. Cute, but sad and lost. How's it going? Shouted Snowflake above the loud clippity-clop coming from the tarmac. Malcolm sat up. They'd been going for hours, down country lanes and then bigger roads, and now this suburban street. And he was more confident with his riding now. He had found that if he pushed his front hooves along the back of the horse's neck, the little gap in them acted like fingers round Snowflake's luxurious mane. He looked around. They were riding through streets lit by lampposts, and the odd light shining from bedroom windows of houses they passed. Behind him they could see Trotsky, Zaza, Mabel, Ludwig and the dollies doing their best to keep up. It was a warm night and Malcolm could feel the breeze on his snout and twitching ears. As they rounded a corner, Malcolm saw a man coming out of a pub. The man's gaze followed Malcolm and Snowflake, and then the gaggle of other animals in their wake. He stood there for a bit, and then shook his head and went back into the pub. Great, shouted Malcolm back. About an hour later they were in the city proper. It was night time now. A pale crescent moon shone above. Snowflake had slowed from a trot to a walk, making it easier for the other animals to follow him. And then suddenly, at a crossroads, he stopped. Where should we go? He said, twisting his neck to look back at Malcolm. Sorry, said Malcolm. How do we get to your house? Malcolm realised that he didn't know the answer to this. He knew where they lived, Brackett Wood, but he didn't know how to get there from where they were. Well, where are we now? I don't know, said Snowflake. By this time, Trotsky, Zaza, Mabel, Ludwig and the dollies had caught up. They all stood by the crossroads looking right and left. You don't, said Malcolm. No, I've just been going towards the city. I thought you might be able to fill in the details when we got there. Why did you think that? Because, Malcolm, said Ludwig, butting in, Snowflake is an animal, as, he added, looking at the pig, sheep, dog and cat around him, are we all. But you, even though you look like a tiny piggy, are apparently a human, so you should know stuff like that. Malcolm looked down from Snowflake's back at the animals looking at him. He felt terrible at the thought he'd brought them all here without really knowing where he was going, or what he was doing. He tried hard to remember something about the geography of the city, but it was difficult, not least because his memory of being a human now felt further away than ever. Then he thought of something. What day is it, he said. Huh, said Ludwig. We don't really know stuff like that, said Mabel. We're animals. Yes, I got that, said Malcolm. You never know what day it is. Well, to be honest, until you arrived, Malcolm, one day was very much like the next. I didn't even know there was such a thing as different days, said Dolly 1. Each day the same, said Dolly 2. Grass, 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 sleep, big and grass. No change from one day to the next, said Dolly 3. It's Sunday, said Zaza, somewhat contemptuously. Early Sunday morning. All the others looked at her. How do you know that, said Malcolm. Because Gavin and Maven always get up later on Sundays, so I get fed later, about 10 o'clock, and I can feel my stomach set for that day, which is lucky, as otherwise I'd be off back to the farm by now for my brekker. The other animals looked doubtful. Trotsky muttered something about, all these cat ever thinks about is food. Malcolm looked over to the side of the road. He could see a newsagent just beginning to open up. The man inside didn't notice them because he was busy piling newspapers up in front of the shop. But Malcolm saw, even with his little piglet eyes, from a distance, that the newspapers were thicker than normal, and that brought a memory, a nice memory back to him, of his parents reading lots of different pages of newspaper on a certain morning, every week. Zaza's right, said Malcolm. It's Sunday. OK, Snowflake, guys, can we just head on into the city? I know where to go. They've stopped, said Benny breathlessly. Yes, they're only about 500 metres away. Speed up, said Bjornita. I have sped up. Oh, yes, so have I. Can you speed up a little bit more? I'm already going at nearly 10 metres an hour. Who do you think I am, Usain Bolt? Oh, no, they've started going again. Half an hour later, the animals, not including the tortoises, were on the outskirts of what looked like a big park. During the journey, Malcolm had turned into a proper rider, tapping Snowflake on his right or left flank whenever he wanted him to turn, right or left, obviously. The other animals had kept on their trail. Malcolm had been following signs. He'd noticed that his reading wasn't as good as usual. He assumed this was another side effect of being an animal. But luckily, the word he'd been looking for on the signs was a small one, and he could still understand it. What does that say, Ludwig? Said Dolly 1 as they stood outside the park entrance. Yes. What say, Ludwig? Ludwig, that word, what? Ahem, said Ludwig. Though I am very wise, a very wise pig. The wisest, said Mabel. And the fattest, said Zaza. Thank you, said Ludwig, and can speak all of my languages. Apart from horse, said Snowflake. Or goat, said Malcolm. Yes, anyway, despite that, I haven't quite managed to master the human thing, the words and what they mean. Reading, said Malcolm. Yes, I rely instead on my native wisdom, unsullied by outside influences, so that my insights have a kind of purity. A native. Zoo, said Malcolm. Pardon, said Ludwig. Yes, pardon, said Mabel. Pardon, said Dolly too. Pardon? Pardon? Oh, for heaven's sake, said Zaza, it sounds like someone's done 20 burps. That's what this place is, a zoo. What is that? Said Snowflake, sniffing at the ground under the sign. Malcolm walked down Snowflake's neck and then jumped off his head. He turned and looked at the animals. It's a place with animals, where my family come every Sunday, although normally without me. I haven't been since I was 6. I can't quite remember why. Right, said Ludwig. And how do we get in? Malcolm looked around. He could see it was getting lighter. He could hear in the distance birds singing. Morning! It's morning! Morning, morning, morning! It sounded like a sweeter version of the cockerel shouting, which made something occur to Malcolm. Maybe K-Pax's spell required a cockerel crowing. Maybe the time he had to get back to being a human would extend as long as the actual sound of a cockle-doodle-doo didn't enter his ears. Maybe, he thought, if I don't actually hear. Wake up, everybody, it's time to wake up. Wakey, wakey, chimps. Wakey, wakey, elephants. Wakey, wakey, giraffes. Is that a cockerel? Said Malcolm, in a deadpan voice. It sounds like it, said Ludwig. Would there be one in this place? Maybe, yes. Oh, yes, said Malcolm, remembering something. In the petting zoo. Sorry, said Ludwig. It's a bit of the zoo where they keep smaller animals for young humans to stroke. I think in there they... Wake up, hippos! Wake up, reptiles! Wake up, camels! Have chickens and stuff, yes. It was clearly a cockerel, which meant that this was his last day of trying out being an animal. Next time he heard a cockerel crow, he wouldn't be trying out being an animal anymore. He would be one, for good. He had to think of a way of getting into the zoo, so he could find his parents, who, he was still assuming, would somehow know what to do. Then Malcolm had an idea. He looked at all the animals and said, You know that facial expression? The one animals do a lot of the time. That one where you look cute, but sad and lost. The animals all nodded and did the expression. Okay, let's all stand here, face the entrance and do that expression. They all did. What now? Said Ludwig, with a bit of difficulty as he didn't want to change his sad, lost expression. We wait, said Malcolm. Chapter 31. A horse, a piglet, 2 bigger pigs, 3 sheep, a cat and a dog. 52-year-old Sanjit Hassan and his young assistant Luke had been opening up the city zoo for 10 years now. They did other jobs at the zoo, fixing signs and cages, handing out maps, cleaning up, but their first task every day was to open the gates. Sanjit looked forward to it. He often said to Luke that opening the gates was like taking a deep, healthy breath of morning air, and today was no exception. It was a lovely morning. The sun was rising above the aviary, and checking his watch, bang on 9:30 a.m, he put the key in the lock. He turned it with a satisfying click, and then, as ever, he took the right-hand gate, and Luke took the left-hand one, and together they opened them. As the gates began to move, Sanjit always looked out to check the pavement was clear of litter, or anything else that might disturb prospective customers to the zoo on their way in to see the animals. Sanjit looked out. The pavement was clear of litter. However, what it wasn't clear of was animals. He stopped moving the gate and blinked a couple of times, wondering if maybe today he hadn't woken up properly and was still dreaming. But even after he had stopped blinking, they were all still there, just sitting, as if waiting. He opened his mouth to speak, but then Luke said blankly, A horse, a piglet, 2 bigger pigs, 3 sheep, a cat and a dog. Yes, said Sanjit. I can see that. Hold the gate a minute. Luke stopped opening his half of the gate, and Sanjit looked at his assistant, who he knew not to be the sharpest claw in the lion cage. Luke looked back at him and then at the animals again. Have they got out? Eh? Said Sanjit. From the zoo. Do you think they escaped? Sanjit frowned. Do we have a horse, a piglet, 2 bigger pigs, 3 sheep, a cat and a dog on show at the zoo? I mean, none of them are, endangered species. Luke thought about this for some time. Yeah, but what about the little zoo, the one for kids? The petting zoo, you mean? Yes, that's right. Sanjit considered this. He couldn't remember exactly which animals were in the petting zoo. There was a cockerel. He knew that because its infernal shouting always disturbed his morning tea. But he thought it was possible that the list also included horses, pigs, sheep, cats and dogs. And he didn't want to appear less on the case, as regards the possibility of escaped animals, than Luke, and turned to look on the line of cute faces. He did think that they looked quite sad and lost. So he said, OK, let's get them in and check. OK, said Luke, and carried on opening his half of the gate. Sanjit did the same, and when the gate was completely open, all the animals trooped inside. Chapter 32. Memories. As the animals were led by Sanjit and Luke towards the petting zoo, Zaza said to Malcolm, "Right, what should we look out for?" "What do you mean?" "Your family, Fatty Bum Bum. What do they look like?" Malcolm thought. He tried to picture them, but it was hard. "Come on, Malcolm," said Zaza. "I can't remember," he said quietly. "The longer I've been an animal, the more my human memories seem to be going." Ludwig stopped and turned. "Try, Malcolm," he said, kindly. "I suspect that all of your memories, this is the one you need to hold on to the most." As Ludwig said this, Malcolm realised that it was true. If he was ever going to get back to being human, the one memory he mustn't lose was the image, somewhere in his mind, of his family. He realised something else as well, which was that Ludwig may not have been able to read or write, and he may have been slightly pompous and absurd, but it was true. He was a very wise pig. So he shut his eyes and thought hard about what his family were like, and a faint image came back to him of Stuart and Jackie and Bert and Libby and Grandpa, of them all coming to the zoo together, as he knew they did every Sunday, and going straight to... "Hey guys," he said, opening his eyes, "I've remembered something." Unfortunately, however, when he had shut his eyes, Malcolm had also stopped walking. None of the other animals had, so now they were nowhere to be seen. Chapter 33. Mud. "What have you remembered?" said a breathless voice behind Malcolm. He turned around to see Benny and Bjornita approaching. "Oh, hi. Where have you been?" "We've been with you all the time," said Bjornita. "Well, not with you," said Benny. "Behind you. Quite a long way behind you." "As far as I'm concerned," said Bjornita haughtily, "we've always been operating as part of the group." "Anyway," said Benny, "what have you remembered?" "Where my family always head to first when they go to the zoo," said Malcolm, turning round and trotting off as fast as his little legs would carry him, leaving the tortoises far behind again. "Oh, for heaven's sake," said Bjornita, "I'm off to the reptile house to see my giant great-aunt." It wasn't that difficult to find what Malcolm was looking for. He again had to follow signs, but this time the signs had pictures on them to help. The elephant house arrow had a cartoon elephant on the end of it. The lion and tiger area arrow was decorated with, well, lions and tigers. And the one Malcolm was looking for had on the end of its arrow a dancing, crazy, smiling monkey. He followed the way set out by 3 of those arrows and ended up in front of the monkey house. The cage he was looking at was huge and contained nearly 20 chimpanzees, rolling around and scratching each other and staring into space. It made Malcolm uncertain, watching them. Something about the monkeys was making him feel uncomfortable, but he couldn't quite place it. "Never mind," thought Malcolm. "What about my family?" He looked away from the cage. It was still early, but there were already people in the zoo. A few of them had noticed him as he'd been walking around. He'd heard one grown-up say, "I guess it must have some kind of new initiative, letting some of the animals just roam about." But so far he hadn't seen anyone he recognised. Malcolm went to sit on a grassy area just behind the concrete path in front of the chimpanzee enclosure. He had a good view of the chimps from here and could see any families approaching them. He settled down on a small muddy patch. He thought, mud, how nice. And even though he was meant to be keeping a sharp eye out for his family, he soon found himself rolling upside down in the mud, rubbing his head and ears into it and closing his eyes. It had, after all, been a long night, travelling all the way there on back of a big white horse. He'd had no sleep, so it was nice just for a moment to let himself sink into this little bit of mud. It was amazing, actually, just how comfy mud was. It was like halfway between a bath and a very soft bed. If you don't worry about it being dirty, and strangely, Malcolm as a pig really didn't. It was just very, very relaxing. So relaxing, in fact, that Malcolm soon found himself drifting off to sleep, thinking, as he did so, that maybe Fatty Bum Bum was a really nice name after all. Chapter 34. Lord King Louis's Precious Pile of Poop. When Malcolm woke up about an hour later, his first thought was, "Oh, I've changed back to being a human. Maybe my mum and dad can come down and when I was asleep and they sorted everything out." The reason he thought this was because the first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was his right hand lying in front of his face. A hand with 4 fingers and a thumb, lines across the palm and nails on the fingers. It was a tiny bit grey, but Malcolm assumed this was because it had got dirty, pressed against the mud. He glanced around, wondering where, if they had sorted everything out, his mum and dad were. He noticed that he still had a good view of the chimps. In fact, if anything, he had a better view of the chimps. One particular chimp was right in front of him, his hairy brow furrowed, dangling his hand in front of Malcolm's face. "What are you doing?" said Malcolm. "Hold on," said the chimp. Hold still. OK. The chimp reached out and pinched his fingers onto Malcolm's forehead. Got it, he said. Got what? A flea, he said, holding it up to the light. A tiny insect. Yum, he added, and ate it. At which point Malcolm realised that he wasn't actually a human again after all. He knew what he was. He stood up and looked around at the other chimps with him in the enclosure. Still, he said out loud, at least compared to a pig in DNA terms, I'm getting closer. Funny you should mention that, said the flea-eating chimp, pointing to beyond the cage bars. There was a little pig out there, a while back, sleeping. Was there, said Malcolm, sitting up and looking at his own black furry arms and black and grey furry tummy, and once again incredibly human hands. Yes, just behind that bit where all the humans stand and stare and point at us and laugh. Malcolm looked out. He could see two families standing there, neither of them his own. They were indeed staring and pointing and laughing. It made him think a little about how it must be for the animals in here, about how they must feel being on show all the time, like they were in, well, a zoo. What's your name? Said the chimp. Malcolm, he said. The chimp jumped up and down and chattered his teeth and made screeching noises. Are you laughing at my name? Said Malcolm. No, I was just letting off a bit of steam, like you do. Oh, what's your name? Tarzan, said Tarzan. Malcolm jumped up and down, chattered his teeth and made screeching noises. You see, feels great, doesn't it? Said Tarzan. No, I was laughing at your name, said Malcolm. Oh, said Tarzan, looking a bit cross. Sorry, not because it's a silly name, just because in the human world Tarzan is the name of a man who's brought up by monkeys. We're not monkeys, said Tarzan. Chimps are apes. Oh, said Malcolm. How come you don't know that? And how come you know that weird thing about my name? Because I'm a human, said Malcolm. I'm a boy. Tarzan jumped up and down, chattered his teeth and made screeching noises. That was you laughing that time, wasn't it? Said Malcolm, after he'd finished. Yep, said Tarzan. After this, another chimp came over, turned around, bent over and said, Here's my bum, which Tarzan seemed to take quite badly, and they ended up having a big roly-poly fight. Malcolm decided that while he was waiting for his family to show up, he might as well see what it was like being a chimp. So he scurried, half bent over, up a wooden ladder onto a high platform, standing in the right-hand corner of the cage. He held up one of his long arms, got hold of one vine hanging from the ceiling, and swung halfway across the cage, and then leapt from there to another one, and swung the rest of the way across. He jumped from that one onto another high platform in the left-hand corner, and climbed halfway down to an enormous tyre swing. He sat in the tyre swing, and let Tarzan, whose fight had stopped almost as suddenly as it had begun, push him. He swung high, sticking his legs out, noticing that his feet too, though hairy, were very human. After about 20 swings, he let himself fall off onto a rope net below. The rope net turned out to be quite tightly strung, and landing on it created a big bounce like a trampoline, throwing Malcolm halfway back across the enclosure. Being a chimp, thought Malcolm, while he was in the air, is brilliant. It's like being in the best playground ever, except that you're more able than usual to swing and climb and jump. I love it, he thought. Well, actually, he thought, He never got as far as the it, because that was when he landed right on the back of the head of the biggest chimp in the cage. Ow, said the biggest chimp in the cage. Sorry, said Malcolm, rolling away. Sorry won't stop my head hurting, the big chimp shouted in a deep, booming voice. Sorry, said Malcolm again. I said, yes, but I don't know what else to say. Also, you've disturbed Lord King Louis's precious pile of poop, said another smaller chimp to the side of the scarily big one. I beg your pardon? Lord King Louis's precious pile of poop, said a second chimp. Oh, my goodness, the holy plop plop, said a third one. Malcolm looked down. By his feet there was a small pyramid of what looked like chimp poo, which did indeed look a little disturbed. It looked a little like, in fact, one of the real pyramids. When he looked up, the 3 chimps all jumped up and down, chattering their teeth and screeching. But they clearly weren't laughing. They were cross with Malcolm, and approaching Malcolm, crossly. Uh-oh, he thought. And that is where we will leave part 4 of Animalcolm by David Baddiel. I'll be back with the next part of this fantastic story and lots more stories coming your way very soon. Stay tuned, and if you'd like to hit a like or subscribe to my channel, that's always appreciated. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.